Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Midwifery Wisdom React. We have a well-stocked birth team for a home birth, and we might even talk about expectations and whether or not you're setting yourself up to experience the best possible birth experience. So stay tuned and don't forget to like and subscribe and check out our other videos.
I had my first contraction today at 1:08 p.m. and I was like, oh my gosh, this one's actually crampy. They were not consistent at all until probably 5 to 6 p.m. I'm gonna set you guys up so you can like see me fully.
Oh, that belly.
But
yeah,
like this.
so ready.
I should probably tell you guys the date. It's December 19th and I am 41 weeks and 4 days pregnant. Part of me hopes I can get some rest, but the other part of me is like, no, let's just leave me here and then you can rest after you have the baby. I'll show you guys.
Who told her she can rest after she has the baby?
I know, right? That's hilarious.
Becca's over here crying, like, oh,
That's not true.
Our bed over.
Somebody lied to you.
Of course, and then we're gonna have the pool right here. Someone told me to squat. I'm having one.
I don't know. That doesn't seem like the most comfortable way to have a contraction.
Yeah. Maybe like when you're farther along and you're trying to open up more?
Yeah, I think this whole squatting thing is so misunderstood. Squatting opens the pelvic outlet, not the inlet. And even that is in debate right now about whether squatting actually even opens the pelvic outlet.
Yeah.
So I just don't think it's like what it's all cut out to be. Have you seen those videos where the placement of the ankle matters?
yeah, but I have thoughts and feelings on that because as a spinning babies parent educator, I am so incredibly passionate about this belief of like balancing the soft tissues and the pelvis and the power and the passenger and the passageway and making sure this baby has the room to come into the most optimal fetal position depending on the type of pelvis that you have and the tendon, all these things. And so there are ideal positions to help the baby in the inlet, and there's ideal positions for the mid pelvis, and there's ideal positions for the outlet. And I've like, sometimes I keep thinking like, but if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? Like if physiological unobserved birth occurs, how do we know what that birthing person did, right? Like if we really just left people alone. And so oftentimes I see these posts about like, put your knees together and your ankles out to help the baby out. And I'm imagining, I know, Augustine, you've attended more than I have, but I'm imagining the hundreds of births that I've attended where we have been very hands-off, sitting in the corner, letting this mom be as untouched and physiological as possible. And no one freaking does that. No one does that, you guys. Like, no one.
The time I squeezed my knees together, it was when I was not accepting that my baby was coming out and I was trying to stop it.
Now I get it. All right, everybody watching, I'm about to show you my butt. Okay, so you see my butt? These are my sits bones. All right, these are my sits bones. When I turn my knees out and I tuck my tailbone under, I got a flat butt, right? These fingers are closer together. But when I turn my knees in and I lift my butt out, they're much farther away. So I get it because babies don't come out of here, right? They come out of like here. So I get like if we do this internal rotation, we do have more space between the pubic arch and the ischial tuberosities, this like triangle of space to help with the baby coming out. But then why don't people do it naturally?
I think it's a good question, and coming from the unassisted birth world myself, I had my babies unassisted 20 plus years ago, and supported and helped and talked with lots of other people doing the same thing. I think an undisturbed birth, actually, they just don't do it squatting, they do it standing. Unassisted and free birthers and folks who don't have a lot of hang-ups around cultural norms don't lay down to have babies at all. And they oftentimes don't also even squat or kneel. They are on their own feet. And I think if we put this in this context of like historically what worked, it would definitely be to be bipedal and ready to run away. From a like evolutionary standpoint, giraffes give birth standing up, horses give birth standing up, everyone's ready to flee. And I think we are too. Laying on your back is the very least protective position. So nobody assumes that on their own, but even being off your feet could be slightly perilous. And so when you're birthing standing up, your knees are together and your bum is out.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. P.S. if you haven't already watched our other React the Lost episode, you'll see what she's talking about when she talks about being vulnerable on your back. But I remember I was like laboring in the tub, and all of a sudden I turned to my husband and I was like, get me out of the tub. I have to get out right now. And I don't know if I was just like weak and I was just like flipping out, or if there was like a reason my body needed to get up. I stood up, I swung my leg around the tub, my baby came out, caught him, brought him up, and it was like, I had to be in that position. There was like an lack of understanding of why I needed to get up. There was nothing, I just needed to do it, Totally. But the squat, but there is that whole documentary, Birth in the Squatting Position, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There is. It's from the 70s. There are clips from folks birthing in their own environment and clips from folks birthing in hospitals. And it's not really clear anthropologically or sociologically whether that was instinctive or instructed. Yeah. I think a lot more research needs to be done. The problem is who's birthing instinctually anymore? Right. We have very few lineages of folks in the world who are birthing the way their mothers and their grandmothers and their great grandmothers and whatever birthed. It's all been usurped by the industrial medical complex.
I did this presentation on like the birth stool for some class that I was in, and so I was like, all right, doing my evidence-based research, right? And there's this one study with out-of-hospital midwives, but it was like birth center style, and they didn't tell the birthing people that they were in a study. And then they got handed envelopes during the pushing phase, and they opened the envelope and it would tell them what position they were supposed to tell the birthing person to get into, whether it was upright, birthing stool, or laying down. And I'm just kind of like, what? They just
seems a little
opened an
unethical.
envelope and said, time to get on the birth stool now. And then they observed, for the whole point of the study was, did we increase hemorrhage and perinatal tearing by being on the birth stool, right?
Did the parents comply?
Some of them complied. If they didn't comply, they weren't part of the study. But then there was
a whole interesting study in itself, right?
Which is interesting. But then there was also the parents that complied that ended up on the birth stool. Like that said, oh, I want to be in my, okay, the envelope said be on my back, right? But then they said, I want to use the birth stool. So they had to like include those people because they were trying to measure perinatal tears and hemorrhage. And so it was just so interesting because, right, the only way to actually make this some type of like double-blind, peer-reviewed, fair research trial is to like tell them to get into this position so that we can
study the results. It's so weird.
Study the results. But that's not, and we've talked about this before, Bekah, right? We were talking about this on the last hemorrhage call, right? The level of hormones that can change hemorrhage, right? Based on fear, based on not feeling safe, etc. So, you go from this like perfect, comfortable pushing phase, and someone tells you to go to a different position.
But that happens
And what if
all
you
the
tear
time
hemorrhage
in the
worse?
hospital. That happens all the time in the hospital.
Well, and so I think what was really interesting about this, what she just said, is that she was like, I've heard that this position is good, right? Didn't she say that? Like, I've heard I should go into a squatting.
Someone told me, yeah. Yeah. Well,
She's
let's
already
see.
in her head.
Yeah.
She's already in her head, yeah. Well, do they ever leave their head? I mean, that's more the question. Yeah.
I think I'm gonna have my midwife head over. They're starting to get really intense.
I remember this point where I just kind of like wandered between contractions where you just like have to move, you like, and then you hold on to like a door frame and then you wander and then you hold on to the fireplace. And
That's awesome.
She was 8.
Well, that's real. There are those Laborland eyes. Midwifery team is busy.
yeah.
That birth assistant or student over there pre-opening the chucks. Oh, so good and smart. It's such a good thing, you guys. Like, anyone watching who's a birth assistant or a new student midwife, like, just open 5 chucks. Like, shake them out, get them flat.
Don't shake them. Don't shake them. Just open them. You know this story. One of the midwives that worked for me opened and shook a chucks after my grandbaby was born. And for the whole first week, it sounded like she had a really bad cold. And eventually I took a light and looked, and she had a piece of chucks fuzz up her nose I had to pull out.
Okay, I mean, like, open them, you know, but yeah, don't
shake them.
Don't shake them. Because when you need them, they're like this like perfect square, and you can't like rip the plastic. Like they're suctioned together, and it's like this like panic in your chest as a student or a birth assistant. Like, I'm trying. Oh, it's so much panic. Just the stupid panics that are relieved in that moment right there. Whew.
God, I told you to set up when I did.
She couldn't feel the posterior suture fontanelle.
Mm-hmm.
It was too low.
It doesn't exactly make sense to me.
So baby was so low, but not flexed.
It also doesn't make sense. You can't get low without being flexed.
Can't like get around to feel.
It should be anterior center.
Mm-hmm.
Likely the reason she couldn't feel is because of molding, if it's so low.
Right, that makes sense.
She could feel the
more
sagittal
like
suture running directly, though.
Or she felt a lot of caput.
And she didn't say caput, but she said she did feel the suture running the correct direction. The question at this point for newer midwives is always, okay, there's a sagittal suture running anterior posterior. So is the anterior fontanelle or is the posterior fontanelle up front?
Yeah.
That's what we like to see. Listen longer. Stay. Baseline 125, sounds good.
I saw Leila's head nodding along the beats. Pumpkin cheesecake. The benefits of childbirth. You can eat pumpkin cheesecake during labor.
That's so great. She's so good at letting go. Look, even her hands are loose.
Loose, just very.
Mm-hmm. She's just opening. I love that they've got enough birth part people. Like there's at least 3 of them. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Good team.
What a smart midwife. Remember the tricks for those midwives who are watching, the trick to tell if it's posterior, anterior, even if you can't feel the suture lines? 3 characteristics that are always true of posterior labors.
I don't want to be wrong because I don't remember what Augustine's going to say, but I'm always looking for that like plate on the belly,
Sometimes,
like
but
the
not always.
weird disc. Okay.
Sometimes, but not always.
I'm usually looking for some type of dysfunctional pattern sometimes.
Bing,
So
bing,
it's
bing.
too
Number 1.
close together,
Dysfunctional
too far
labor.
apart.
Yes.
Some type of
Yes.
dysfunctional labor.
Exactly. There's always dysfunctional labor. There could be weird patterns, stop and start labor, long labors, fast and then random.
Seems like transition, but you're at 1 centimeter labor.
Exactly. That's those
Yeah.
dysfunctional labor, and dysfunctional for her. If her last labor was 6 hours, 12 hours is dysfunctional for her, but it's normal for a first time mom, right? So dysfunctional for her. Yeah.
Yeah, dysfunctional. Oftentimes it's not just back labor, but it's like this type of back labor that feels like your spine is being ripped out of your back and it doesn't go away in between contractions. Like it's not like during
Dysfunctional
contraction.
pain goes into the same category. Dysfunctional labor, dysfunctional pain, same category.
Shoot, I'm losing here.
Some have back pain, some don't.
Okay, you have to do the second and third one.
Well, I'll give you a hint. I think you'll get there too. They have to do with your exam. If you can't find the fontanelles, you can find other things. Number 2, dysfunctional labor is number 1. Number 2 is that there is always a lip.
On one side, front,
In the front,
back,
anterior, or lateral, but there's
some
always
kind of
a
funky
lip.
lip.
Because the crown of the head is not well applied, because the pubic bone is holding the frontal bone up. Yeah. So there's always a cervical lip of some kind at sometimes 7 centimeters. It's oddly shaped.
But it's like extra in a space. That's interesting. Okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Yep. It's not 100% and thin applied, right? There's something in the way. And it's because there's not good application of that fetal head on the cervix. And number 3 is there's always space in the back. So when you start doing exams, you should run right into the fetal head, and it's low in posterior. It's like the bulk of the head is in the sacrum. But if you can do an exam and fit your fingers behind the head, it's posterior.
Makes total sense. And you know, it's
those 3 things together are 100%. Even if she has no back pain, she's not complaining, you know, even if that's true, the baby's posterior.
Yeah.
So I love that this midwife has been proactive and has said, I can't say 100% that your baby's anterior. Let's be proactive and see if we can't resolve this so that you don't go through hours and hours of unnecessary pain. It's brilliant.
Yeah. I think my only question with this though, and again, my thought is that like, what at this point is dysfunctional? She's at 8 centimeters. Her contractions are 2 to 3 minutes apart. She's not over here screaming of some type of crazy, horrific back pain. The pelvic exam was funky. They couldn't figure out the suture lines, but there isn't anything that what I call like red flags or what Spinning Babies calls invitations to act. There aren't any of these invitations to act. And so for this body, posterior might be the optimal position for this baby to be born.
I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. And the things that we don't know is what number baby this is for her. We don't know how long she's been having prodromal labor. We know that she's almost 42 weeks, and we don't know what the exam is like. So sometimes it doesn't look externally like there's some invitation to act, but your exam does show you that. So, you know, I'm going to take the benefit of the doubt and think that this midwife is being proactive with signs.
Right. Yeah, you're right. She's 42 weeks. This might be day 7 that she's been off and on, off and on, off and on. And she might have been 7 centimeters for 2 weeks. And
we don't know.
This isn't progress.
Right.
And that is the sign. That is the dysfunction. That is the invitation to act.
Yeah. So we don't know a lot of details, but here I would say there was enough question from the midwife's exam just in
To
camera
balance.
that I would say I agree. And midwifery is such a judgment call, right? It's such an individualized care process. I think if you walked into every laboring woman's house and within 5 minutes we're like, okay, let's get you in this new position, it wouldn't be any different than that study you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
But I think that most midwives are acting very individualized and are taking into account the holistic picture of that person's progress and situation and history and case and emotions and all the things. And I want to take the benefit of the doubt there that she's doing what this client needs.
Yeah. And it sounds like, because what I would do if baby was in mid pelvis, 0 or +1, and posterior, and any type of dysfunction that I knew of, again, based on my own personal, the first thing I would do would be the side lying release, because that's going to balance the sacrotuberous and coccygeal ligaments that are kind of causing baby to not be able to make that turn in that mid pelvis area, and pelvic floor tension too. So interesting.
Yeah.
I remember a post we did on our Instagram, I'll show it here, about like having a birth team, like your team around you who you picked to have with you. And this shot right here with like everyone is just so good.
It's beautiful.
And we know there's someone else over there charting too.
Yeah.
Look at that, the photographer stepping in to help with a rag.
It's beautiful.
Oh, I feel like my body's pushing. It's okay. It's okay. Oh. I can't help it. It's okay. It's okay. Oh.
You do what your body wants you to do. It's okay.
That deep and unstoppable feeling of pushing where you just literally can't stop it.
Mm-hmm. That means it's usually pretty darn effective. I had a birth last week, and she did not have that. And before I thought that she really should be, she had this like, I feel like I have to push. And so I said, where do you feel that pressure? Where do you feel that? What does it feel like? So she just did it for like an hour, but it was not very overwhelming. And every third contraction or so, she would just make noise instead of push. And so I was like, I don't think this is it. So even though I like to be pretty hands off, I was like, can we do an exam and see what's going on with your cervix? And she had been pushing against a 5-centimeter cervix.
Ow.
And it was super swollen. So it made me, like, my students were like, what? Like, she was pushing. And I've seen this a few times in my career where people push because they want to, not because they are or should be. They just heard that that's the next stage, and they're like, I really want to be in the next stage. So I think if I hold my breath, then I'll be in the next stage, you know? And yeah, it's such a hard thing to do. Like, should we check, or should we just let nature take its course, right? In this case, that was not going to work, you know. Following her own internal guidance was not working.
Something that I've found really interesting, and again, though, like you said, they have to be really in tune with the difference between intuition, fear, and wishes, right? Because those all can like blend into this really deep, dark, dirty mess. But is asking them like, hey, when you push, does it feel good? Does it feel right? Does it feel yummy and gooey and productive and great? Or does it feel off? Does it feel bad? Does it hurt? you know? And
Yeah.
usually when they say like, I mean, I want to, I'm pushing, right? So, but it kind of just, I don't know. It's like, it's not time,
Yeah.
right? But if they're
Yeah.
like, oh my God, this feels so good. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
it's time.
The phrase I've used before is irresistible. When it's irresistible, then, you know, it's almost always the right thing to do. Yeah.
Who loves her head? It's so squishy. There is kind of a membrane over it. So maybe you'll feel it on her paws. Alright. When she's coming out, her head is crying. She slowly her out. You put your hand in there so she comes nice and slow.
Guiding her to hold herself. I really love that. When crowning, to give your own perineal or clitoral support, you know, can really help mamas not blast a baby out. And
Irresistible. And the uterus, amazing.
I was just gonna say, like, that's strong uterus.
I love that.
Leila and I are uterus admirers. Lots of mamas play these like really soft sounding like piano or Enya or whatever. One time I did a birth for a mom who was like 9-inch nails in Metallica. And I was like, that actually matches the scene a little better, actually. Go for it. She's like screaming along. Great.
Yeah, you know, that's a good point to talk about, though, is like being careful not to place your own expectations of what a birth environment should look like. You know, like, hard not to, though.
Yeah.
So powerful.
Dude, we should have a fund to save all the midwives' backs.
Oh.
That's a nice cord wrap. You see that?
Oh, good baby. Oh, baby.
It was a parachute.
Yeah, it's a I've oftentimes thought that labor hurts so much because a part of your heart is breaking off, and then you birth it outside your body and lift it back to be close to where it used to live. Oh, sweet. Baby sounds.
She said, go ahead and push now. Oh, is that for placenta? So she reached down and felt for something. Is that like feeling if the cord is pulsing? If it's not, she's like, okay, go ahead and push it out.
You actually follow the cord up into the vagina and see if the placenta is just sitting on the cervix or in the vagina versus if it's still far away and attached.
Oh.
I don't know if she's doing that, but that is the technique we do sometimes.
Yeah, but you're also not wrong too, Bekah. I've so many times midwives will just feel to see if the cord is pulsating, and then if it is, they won't follow up. They won't even like go to see if it's there. And if it isn't pulsating, then travel it up and see if it's sitting right there.
You're disappointed. I didn't even use my labor playlist.
As someone who's had a precipitous birth, the disappointment of not getting to do your things is real.
Yeah, you're not wrong though, Bekah. Like, people who have precipitous births are just as I'm not going to say unfortunate, but run into the same situations as people who have these long, prolonged labors. Like they didn't get the expected experience that they thought they would get. They didn't get the playlist. They didn't get the, snuggly, comfy, hubby, experience, the time with this and that, the pictures, because it just happened so fast. Just like the people with prolonged.
I had one mom, she was so mad she didn't get to eat her labor popsicles.
Oh. Yeah.
Isn't that funny? Like the one thing, labor popsicles?
Yeah.
Really? You didn't have a 30-hour labor. Aren't you happy? But like, no, seriously.
About your whole pregnancy and dream about and prepare for and like plan for, and then it doesn't happen. And it's so like not important, but it's
important. It's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I've oftentimes said that the biggest thing that causes birth trauma is unmet expectations.
Yep. And at the same time, the biggest thing that creates mothers and births mothers is surrendering to that there is no such thing as the ability to have an expectation around birth.
Yeah.
Or your kid's
I
life.
had a client once who she had the most beautiful home birth, first time mama. Her sister-in-law had already had a home birth with us. She knew us. She'd visited us after her sister had birth. She took the classes, read the books, was so excited, and had a beautiful 6-hour birth. Her husband caught in her bedroom, her sister-in-law, everything was beautiful. And she was so traumatized because it took 6 hours. And she was expecting it would take 3.
Oh.
So traumatized that she had a hospital birth with her next baby.
Oh.
So that she could control it more, have her Pitocin or epidural or whatever it is that she imagined.
Wow.
The ironic thing, of course, is that she had the baby in the car on the way to the hospital. The second time.
Like, no.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it was just teaching her, you are not in charge, right? Like that's what birth does. You're not in control.
Right.
That's the thing. That's why I rally against birth plans so much. Make a postpartum plan, figure out who's going to feed you and clean your house, but you can't plan labor any more than you can plan your life. Did you think you'd be here 5 years ago? I mean, we're not in charge.
The only reason why I love birth plans is because I think that it's the journey of education that the birth plan gives you, right? So as you're going through it, you're like, wait a minute.
I don't want that.
Right? Or I don't want that. Or what do you mean I want an enema? Or you know what I mean? Or shaved? Like all these things, right? So it's this journey of education and then you throw it away.
Yeah, but I think that the problem is what it's called, right? The problem is that it's called a birth plan.
Not birth preferences.
Yeah.
Even that, I think, because I mean, this is why I've been a birthing from within educator for 20 some years is this non-attachment to outcome is the kind of the hallmark of birthing from within preparation is that you cannot plan your birth. And so trying to sets you up for trauma. So instead, it's about learning all of the possibilities and broadening your perspective so that you're prepared for any eventuality, whether that be birthing in the car or birthing by emergency cesarean. Both of those are possible for just about everyone. And that's why it's important to open our perspective and prepare for every little piece of it. Yeah. This was such a beautiful video. Thank you guys for reviewing it with me.